Well, thank you so much again for doing this. This is all about you guys, your journey in music, and forming. It's Ladles, right?
Yeah.
Or how
That's
do I
great
say it?
pronunciation. We usually go by the ladles,
The Ladles.
but we have had people interpret it as the ladless because we are ladless.
Sure. That's where I was going with. I was like, oh, maybe because they're Ladless, but it's the Ladles.
Yes.
Yeah, Ladles. I mean,
Okay.
hey, at least you didn't misread it as ladies, which is like the thing that happens almost probably 80% of the time. People think it's the ladies.
Number
Oh.
common.
So it's the one more time, so I don't totally screw this up again. The ladles.
Ladles. Just like a ladle.
Yeah. Like a soup server.
Got you. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Awesome. Well, again, thanks for doing this. This is all about you guys. So where are you both born and raised?
Can you hear me, by the way? Sometimes my Zoom is like a little iffy, but you can hear me right now?
I can hear you. There's like some little ambient sound, but it's all good.
That's my heater. I'm like kind of cold, but I'll probably turn on. But I'm in San Francisco, which is where I was born and raised.
Oh, amazing. What about you, Caroline?
I'm on the Upper West Side, which is also where I was born and raised in Manhattan.
Wow. So totally polar opposite spots here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is that wow. So how did the band form then? Were you guys in the same area at one point in time, obviously?
Yes, definitely. We met at the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston, which I obviously went to Boston to
Sure.
college. And we just overlapped for 1 year there. I ended up transferring to Berkeley College of Music.
Mm-hmm.
And then Caroline finished out at NEC, and then Katie had transferred in from another school. So we just overlapped for that 1 year in 2014. But yeah, we've been kind of like a long distance band for a while just because of different people being in college at different times and other people moving and this and that. So we're kind of used to it at this point, and we definitely make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Just meeting when we can, and the years that we spent in Boston were a really good foundation for kind of building the way that we work, and a lot of time, a lot of touring and performing spent together. So now it's not that hard to kind of come back, learn new music, do a tour, and get everything we need to get done in like 2
Sure.
weeks.
So it's probably with this pandemic and everything, I'm sure that made it, you already had like kind of experience like working long distance already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I would say so. It was still hard. We had a lot of touring scheduled that was all canceled. So, but at least that's true. We definitely know how to work at a distance, and um, we have like weekly phone meetings, just kind of checking in and little things like that that keep you feeling like some sort of schedule is happening even in the midst of a pandemic. Which
Sure. That's
sure.
awesome. Well, that's nice. Well, Caroline, so you were born and raised in New York City.
Yes.
Tell me about that. And how did you get into music?
Well, my father is a professional guitarist.
Oh, wow.
Growing up, he was not usually. He was the guitarist for Lion King on Broadway for 17 years.
Wow.
And then he switched to another show because that was making him go crazy. And
after 17 years of playing the same Lion King songs.
yeah, but in like the music, like, in the trade, it's the closest you can get to like an office job, I think,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I grew up with a lot of instruments in the household, lots of different kinds of music, because he was like a session musician. Whatever really came his way, he would go for it. And I think that really gave me a lot of exposure to different styles, just the different CDs that we had at home, and things like that. And I got started when I was about 5. I started singing for voiceover recordings and
Oh, wow.
singles, just through a family friend. Someone said, "Oh, she should try doing that," and And my dad said, do you want to try? And I said, yes. So that's kind of how I started out. And then when I got a little too old for that, I did choir. I joined a choir, and I really stayed in the choir scene all the way through high school. So most of my training has been like through vocal harmony and singing in choirs, and I had some instrumental lessons here and there, but nothing stuck like voice did. I don't know if it was I was bad at practicing or what, but I would, a few years I did piano, and then I was like, I'm done. And then in middle school, I was like, the cello is my instrument. And then I, after like 3 years, I was like, I'm done. And then in high school, I was like, saxophone is the thing for me. And then that one only lasted a year and a half.
But where's the guitar fall in? Does that, I mean, I would think that would be the obvious go-to since your dad's a guitar player professionally.
It's actually not really gung-ho on picking up this same exact instrument that he played. He never wanted to pressure me to do anything musical that I didn't want to, and he was really like just didn't want me to feel like I had to do it because he didn't want me to feel forced. So I also felt like I wasn't really ready to start that relationship of us both playing something or me trying to learn something that he plays so amazingly. And with the banjo, which is what I play in the Ladles, I went for that instrument first specifically because it was not the guitar. And it was a string instrument hanging on the wall in the apartment. And I thought, well, this isn't a guitar. So I feel pretty comfortable trying this one out. And that's how that stuck. And with both banjo and guitar, I really kind of learned by learning to accompany my singing, and that's how I've learned to play the instrument. So through time, through writing songs is really how I got into playing those two.
Interesting. How many times did you see The Lion King growing up?
Oh, well, I probably saw it on like from the audience at least 5 times. Tickets are expensive.
Yeah.
So,
your dad didn't just sneak you in the back door or let you sit
that happened once. Once it was bring your daughter to work day, not really, but like he needed to bring me to work, family emergency. And so I was there, and it was a show with a matinee and an evening performance. So for the matinee, I sat in the pit with him, which I've done quite a few times because I can almost always do that to, a certain extent. And then for the evening show, they snuck me in the back.
Wow.
And it's an amazing show. I mean, just like music aside and Elton John's writing,
of course,
puppetry and the costumes are just, it's like an explosion of beautiful visuals.
Were you a fan of the movie?
I was, but it got banned in the household pretty early on.
Really?
Yeah, we're just tired of, you
hearing it.
Exact thing.
Did you watch the sequel?
I did watch the sequel, but it's very fuzzy. We're going into single-digit ages here,
So yeah, I'm sorry we're getting the weeds with The Lion King, but I saw the sequel and I really wasn't impressed whatsoever. But hey, that's just me.
Yeah.
It was just growing up on the original and then trying to reproduce it in this very kind of cheesy, in my opinion, way. But yeah, I would be interested to get your dad's opinion on it. He probably doesn't even care because he's like, I've played those songs for 17 years. I don't even care anymore.
Yeah, I think there would be an expletive thrown in there, and then like, I don't care anything about it at all. Let me tell you.
All right. Well, Lucia, how did you get into music? You were born and raised in San Francisco.
Yeah. So it's funny what Caroline was saying about her dad not wanting to force her, because I feel like that's such a musician mindset. Like, I feel like, if I ever had kids, I would never try to force them into an instrument. But my parents were not musicians. So they didn't force me, actually. They forced my older brother. And I just thought he was the coolest person in the world. So
of course.
He started playing violin. I was like, I have to play the violin. There's no other option here. but I actually loved it and was really excited about it, whereas he was kind of more of like the forced situation. Yeah, so I started playing violin when I was 6.
Wow.
And yeah, and did classical and like Suzuki method for a little bit, and then switched to more of like the classical violin kind of, you know, I went on that track pretty seriously until I was about 15. And then I realized, well, I had been pretty exposed to like fiddle. I did fiddle when I was really little, and then I went really deep into classical and kind of like was doing that. And then after the age of 15, I was kind of like feeling very constricted by the classical structure, especially because I wanted to improvise more. So I kind of stopped that and was looking into and started doing more fiddle and more improvisational styles. I went to, for 2 years, I went to like this classical orchestra high school here in, well, it's actually in Marin. But,
okay. Yeah, I lived in the Bay Area for like 5 years. I was curious to find out whereabouts you were. Because people say San Francisco and then they could be in like, you know, Cupertino, or they could be in, you know, Walnut Creek or Dublin or something else.
Potrero Hill, if you know Potrero Hill.
Yeah. Okay.
Which actually, fun fact, I'm living back in my childhood home.
Is that your childhood room you're in?
No, this was actually my parents' room. Another fun fact is my 3 of my siblings were born in this room.
Because really?
Yeah, my mom was like into the home birth thing, so
that's amazing.
There's some family history in here.
There is.
Yeah, I moved away for 6 years. I went to Boston. I lived in New Orleans, and then I came back, and I just love it so much. It's no place like home, you know. But anyway, so classical. Then I started doing fiddle, and I did do chorus, which Caroline and I have in common. I did the San Francisco Girls Chorus, and so we both had this background of like choral harmony singing. But I didn't do a ton of singing. I just did chorus until I was like 12 or 13, which I think gave a good foundation. But then I was really in the violin thing, and it wasn't until the Ladles that I kind of started singing again and having it be a part of my just like my musical identity, you know. I was mostly like, I definitely mostly identify as an instrumentalist. But yeah, so I went to NEC, and then I went to Berkeley, and I ended up graduating from Berkeley and doing violin performance and American roots music there, which was super fun.
What was that process like getting into Berkeley? Was it like you went in as a violin player?
Yeah, I did audition.
Was there auditions? And I heard it's like, it's funny. So I've interviewed a lot of people that went to Berkeley, right? And it's either, yeah, they just let everyone in. I just kind of sent this tape of me pretending like trying to play, and they let me in. Or it was gnarly. Like I had to like sight read on the spot and like do this and that and the other thing. So I'm always curious on everyone's like process of how they got into the school, because it's like such a bipolar answer that I get from people. It was like at one point they just let anyone in, and then it was impossible.
Yeah. Well, for me, coming from a classical background, I had a lot of experience with auditions. So to me, the Berkeley audition was kind of a piece of cake. Like,
okay,
they don't make you do that much. You don't even have to do pre-screening, which is where you send in a video, and then you can, if you get through that round, then you can do the in-person audition. So, and yeah, there was sight reading, but because I did so much classical, I love sight reading, so it's not really, I think it really depends what your background is. For me, it was more stressful to do the improvisation part,
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's like a shredder in their household and then they go and they don't know a note on paper.
Exactly. Yeah. So it depends on your strengths, but luckily I had the experience of auditioning a lot, so in that sense, I was kind of prepared for, yeah, it's funny, actually, I worked in the admissions office at Berkeley when I went there, and I talked to a lot of people about the audition, and some people were like so stressed about it, and then other people weren't. But I think it does really just depend what background you come from.
Sure. Yeah. Because it sounds like you've had a classical background throughout the 6 when you've kind of picked up the violin.
Yeah, and a lot of reading music, and a lot of just that structure of auditions, and working on things really intensely, practicing a lot. And then I kind of let all of that go, and I really don't identify as a classical musician at all anymore. I don't. I still play it for fun because I love it, and I would love to do more chamber music, but I don't put in that work anymore, and you have to put in so much work to be that. And now I've kind of got more into like songwriting and playing guitar. I play guitar a lot, more than violin, honestly.
Yeah, I saw in like your Instagram, you play guitar quite a bit, but then there's like pictures of you at like, you look like you're super young with playing violin. So.
Yeah, that was my roots, and I always violin will always be like my one true love / frenemy.
Sure. When you were going through, like, so you both met in school at Berkeley?
In New England Conservatory, actually. So I transferred to Berkeley, but Caroline went to NEC, and that's where we all met. So it was actually at New England Conservatory.
Okay, so you went there and then transferred out to Berkeley, and then Caroline, did you finish at New England Conservatory?
Yeah, me and Katie both. So yeah, but we all had that one year, the very first year in 2014 where we met, and then I stayed for Katie had 2 years left, and then so that the next year she graduated, and then she was out, and then Lucia had gone to Berkeley, and then I was left at NEC, finished out, got that degree.
There you go. Lucia, why did you decide to transfer to Berkeley? Was there a reason for that?
Yeah, well, the main reason was money, to be honest.
Yeah.
Initially, although in hindsight, I truly believe things happen for a reason, and it was totally the right move for me. And I did want to get more into fiddle and work with some of the teachers at Berkeley, because there's just a lot more of that at Berkeley. So there was that, but I kind of got forced out of NEC because I just couldn't afford it, and so I was kind of reevaluating. I spent 1 semester in Boston, not going to school and working at this restaurant called Henrietta's Table in Harvard Square. And I did a terrible job there. I was not cut out for it. But yeah, but then I just for the heck of it, I was like, I'm just going to apply to Berkeley. Like, I didn't think, because that's also a super expensive school. So
right. It's not, you weren't going to community college.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't really see it working out, but it actually did. And they just have a lot more money than NEC does to offer people, so.
Grant wise or scholarship wise.
Yeah, exactly. Gotcha. They just have a much bigger endowment. So that was the reason initially. And then it all like felt like, oh wow, this is like totally the way it should happen. And then still so grateful that I got that year at NEC, because it was amazing, and obviously I met the Ladles and so many other incredible musicians. So it was all worth it.
Well, with the Ladles, like, were you guys a band when you were all at the conservatory together?
Yeah, we kind of formed our band pretty quickly, I feel like.
Yeah, like in the first few months, I believe.
Yeah. So we were in this very small program, the Contemporary Improvisation Program, and it was like a handful of people. I mean, like 30 at most.
Yeah.
And
oh, wow.
Yeah, but we were the only 3 undergraduate women at the time. At that year in the program, there were only 3 women in the undergraduate contingent of the Contemporary Improvisation Program. So that was definitely a reason that we kind of gravitated towards each other pretty quickly initially. yeah, it was very male dominated at that time. And I think it depends on like when you're there, but so I feel like that's why we kind of, yeah, we gravitated towards each other, but it is kind of serendipitous that we actually became a band, you know?
Sure.
There's
Were you guys playing together, like being the only, you know, female undergrads? Obviously, that kind of drew you guys together. And then were you like, okay, let's start jamming a bit, and then the band kind of just evolved, or like, how did you guys decide, you know, let's start writing music together? And then was it, let's start playing shows because we have some songs? Like, what was it? But then, Lucia, you leave to go to Berkeley. I mean, was that, I don't want to stir up drama, but I don't know, was that like a hard hit for you, like Caroline, and for you and Katie to be like, oh, well, now we have a band, and then she's going, and like, what are we going to do?
Well, the lucky thing is that Berkeley and NEC are just around the corner from each other.
So, oh, they are. See, I wasn't sure logistically where these schools
no,
are.
They're both in the Back Bay in Boston. They're actually quite nearby. It's like a 10-minute walk at most.
Oh, so it didn't make any difference at all, really, it sounds like.
Yeah, and then our second year in Boston, we all arrived in Boston at the same time that one year.
Sure.
Our second year together, we actually all lived together in a dilapidated basement apartment.
Oh.
And so that, just a built-in rehearsal space. Yeah, I think we kind of evolved from like just kind of jamming and we tend to do more, we definitely have an arranging process and a performance style that is very distinctly us as the Ladles. But in general, with our repertoire, one of us comes with a song already written. So the format was often like, oh, hey, I have a song, like I want to try it out with you guys. Can we I have some ideas for harmonies. Can we put a harmony here? Can we fill it out there? And then let's figure out what the instruments are doing. Has often been how we function, how we arrange things. And also not just things we write, but also we'll do some folk standards, some early jazz swing style singing and playing. That's we have Lucia, who's the old time expert, and we have Katie, she really has a strong background in Western swing. Okay. So lots of fun, tight female 3-part harmonies in that category.
That's amazing. And then, so, and what year was this around? Because 2016, you guys put out like your EP, which is the self-titled EP. Yes. Was that recorded when you guys were still in college? Was it recorded in the dilapidated home you were all living in together?
It was the year of the dilapidated home. Wasn't recorded in the dilapidated home. It was actually Katie's father is also a jazz pianist. And okay. See, she's from the Catskills. And we've recorded it in his home studio way back when. So that came out our sophomore year, or my sophomore year, our second year together as a group. And yeah, we actually got a small grant from NEC, an entrepreneurial grant to fund the EP. So yeah, that was just our first little, we need a recording. It feels very old, and I often think of when people want to hear us, especially the people who don't think about like buying the album, they're like, oh, I want to hear you guys. And I'm like, oh, well, I should give them, I have leftover EPs in the closet. And I'm like, I don't really want to share it.
You're like, here's our Spotify link.
really, they're not bad recordings, but I think I'm speaking for all of us when I say, you just listen back. They're old. We've evolved. We've matured. Sure. We've gotten better. So we have more recent recordings that are a little more the primary thing we'd like to put on the Spotify.
Right. I'm sure that you have the early fans though that love that first EP. You know, you always have those fans that hold that like dear to their heart. Like, why are you not playing blah 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 off the, you know, why aren't you playing Juvenile? I want to hear that song. And you're like, well, I've got like a million other ones that are cooler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Definitely.
So you have a record that came out in 2019. That's kind of there's a big gap there. Was that due to being in college, trying to finish up school? And were you able to even really tour the first EP? Or was it just kind of like, okay, we got a little money from this, we funded it, we wanted to put something out, now we'll just kind of see what happens? Like where was the progression between that record and the 3 years later when you put out The Line?
Yeah, like it's definitely due to us being in school and our schedules. We did tour a lot before we put out The Line, but it was always pretty concentrated in the summer or like breaks.
Sure.
Breaks from school. But by the time we recorded The Line, we had been touring that music for like 3 years. So we were so ready to record those songs, get them out there, and then kind of like move on, you know, from that batch of songs pretty much. I mean, obviously there were tons of other ones too, but the ones that made it onto that record.
The record.
Yeah, so, yeah, and I think everything has always happened pretty organically with us, like, in the sense that we haven't, like, super planned out, like, oh, we're gonna do this record, and then a year later this record, or it just kind of was naturally like, wow, we have all these songs we've been playing for so long, we need to record these, get them out there, and then start doing the next tour and building our next album of songs. And then basically in 2020, beginning of 2020 was when we kind of were like, okay, let's get serious. Let's book all these tours. We're going to record another album, like all this stuff. And then it all
came crashing down. So where were you guys in the beginning of 2020? You're putting this all together. Are you around the same area? Are you back in San Francisco at this time, Lucia? Or like, are you all kind of close to each other and we're like, all right, let's get this tour rolling? Yeah. And then the world shuts down. Like, talk to me about where you all were during the beginning of this.
Yeah, so I was living in California at the time, and they were both in New York. But that has never really posed a problem before with touring, because I would just kind of meet them wherever we were gonna tour from. So we actually had a 2-week run of shows.
We were in New Orleans, I think, right? We were going to meet in New Orleans.
Yeah, we were. But in January, we had this 2-week run of shows, which is when we were like, all right, let's plan out this whole year. And that was January of 2020, end of January. And then we had booked that tour in New Orleans, or in the South, starting in New Orleans. Then there was one on the West Coast that was going to come like the next month, and then the summer, and like just a bunch of touring.
Okay.
And then literally like 2 days before I was going to fly there to New Orleans, it was like March 15th or something, was when California like totally shut down.
Right.
And so everything got canceled.
Came to a halt there. Yeah. Wow. Okay. With these songs that you've released this year, like Sunset Pink, you know, you have Thank You out, Nobody Knew. With those songs, were those written and recorded during the quarantine, or was that stuff you had recorded prior and you're kind of holding and waiting for this tour, and then now you're like, okay, let's just periodically release? Like, how did that work?
So the one thing that was kind of left standing after we like watched everything get canceled for 2020 was this residency that we had planned in August at the Springville Center for the Arts, which is in Western New York, about 30 minutes from Buffalo. And in the meantime, we're like, okay, well, we have this meeting point that we can look forward to. You know, we had a safe place to stay. We had a house all to ourselves. We were being commissioned to come and work on a project of some sort. And so we were able to meet up there, and I believe it was 3 weeks, a 3-week long residency. Wow. Am I right? Was it 2 weeks? I can't even remember anymore.
I think it was 3. Yeah,
it was 3. Yeah,
wow.
No, 3. And so we had all come with, since we had not seen each other since our January tour, and this was in August, so one of the longest periods of time that we had.
9 months, 8 months later.
And so we all had material to share that I think most of us, I think it's safe to say most of the songs on the forthcoming album, including Thank You, Sunset Pink, Nobody Knew, were written in 2020 during that turbulent time. Maybe not like 100% of them, but they were all songs that were newer, just had begun to be workshopped before we stopped, being able to get together, or we had been developing while we were apart and were eagerly awaiting a time where we could get together and arrange them. And the recording came out of the residency. Initially, we weren't planning on having a full-blown, produced and polished album. Okay. We kind of needed a culmination project for the residency that, because they have, it's a really wonderful residency program. They put you up in a beautiful space and you have access to all kinds of art materials, and just, it's a lovely community. And so they often have visual artists, and usually there's kind of a specific project that someone's working on, and we were kind of like, we're getting together and workshopping our songs. And so what is the thing that we can produce the physical product? So we thought we'll have an informal recording of all the music that we put together during this residency, and we'll record it in the chapel of the Art Center, because the Art Center is it resides in an old church.
Okay.
And they converted the chapel into a listening hall with road seats and a stage, and it's got beautiful residents, and we really like how we sound in there. So
that's awesome.
And we brought our friend over from Brooklyn, our friend Dylan McKinstry, who's a wonderful engineer and producer, just to get it done, nicely. And the plan was originally just whoever orders these limited edition physical copies of the CD will get it. And we did it in a week. And by the time we were done, I think we had all kind of realized, like, this is high quality. Like, this sounds really good. And it's like, I think we definitely knew that it was enough work had been put in, and it sounded really good enough that we wanted to share it as an album to the general public on all platforms. So that's how we got there. And that's these singles have just been songs from this album leading up to the big release, which is next week.
Very cool. And as far as a release, I mean, still everybody's locked up. You can't tour. Hopefully, I know they announced Outside Lands for the Halloween weekend, and Bonnaroo's happening, I think, September. Like, is there the hopes that you'll be able to tour the record, or do you have stuff trying to line up something, or how are you going to go about doing a release? Any big plans?
Well, we're doing some online things, but as of now, I think it's pretty, wait and see. We're still kind of in the wait and see territory, and as most artists are at this point, hopefully in the summer, more outdoor stuff can happen. Mm-hmm. But it does feel good to get this music out there and kind of be engaging with people and sharing with people in this way, even if we can't tour. So
sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
We will see. That's awesome. Do you guys like doing the like live streaming things, and is it difficult to navigate with both of you on different coasts, or all three of you kind of on different coasts?
Well, I'm going to New York. I'm going to New York on Thursday. So
okay. So you'll be together.
Yeah, we three are at least all in the same room. I will say it's a little it definitely is a little off-putting, because we're used to this energy that any performer, I'm sure, feels when you have a physical audience present. And even if no one's saying anything, you do get some feedback. You can just read people's faces, you can see. And so I definitely, speaking for myself, have a good time, because I know it's like, wow, people are watching on the other side of that.
Right.
But it is like, it's a very strange energy when you're finished, because we're used to kind of having, people come up to us and say that was great, or maybe they'll come up and have some criticism or something, but there's no human interaction with other people who have been listening, except for maybe comments on Facebook,
or hearts going up or something.
And then we're just with each other like, well, what do we do now? Like,
sure,
we don't have to go to the merch table, but I guess we'll go for an after show drink.
Yeah, or a little Zoom party or something.
Yeah. So it's a little strange. But luckily I think we will do one show in the park in Brooklyn that we're looking forward to.
That's
Last time
cool.
we got together, just a little something. It does feel good to, see people on the other side.
Yeah. It is weird. The weirdest thing to me with the live streaming is just when you finish a song and there's no applause.
Yeah, you're like,
kind of, yeah, exactly. Kind of like, you're performing, so you're in that performance headspace. So then when you finish a song and it's just like totally silent, it's like, well, I guess we'll go to the next
you're like, is this thing on? Oh, well, I can't wait to hear the rest of the record. I love the first 3 songs that you guys have put out so far. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Before I let you go, though, I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I always think it's really important and it's like really cheesy, but what I found is just in general, staying honest with yourself, and then in that way you can be true to who you are as a creative being in this world. Like, the best thing you have to offer is your own uniqueness. So just being true to who that is and understanding who that is and giving yourself the time and space to figure it out, I think is the best thing that we as artists can do, because it's such a necessary part of humanity.
I love it. Thank you so much, Lucia. What about you, Caroline?
I would say, well, geez, that was a great answer on Lucia's part.
She just drops the mic.
In terms of self-assurance, I would say to remind yourself that even if you feel that, especially in this world where I think a lot of people who are independent artists and are doing their own promotion, doing, whatever it is to get their stuff out there and seen, is to remind yourself that even if you feel like you don't have an impact, remind yourself that you do have an impact, that you sharing your art with people does make a difference to the people who are seeing it, who are listening to it, and receiving it, and it does shape other people's experiences. And so in that way, all art is important, and no one artist is insignificant. Bringing it backward.